Welcome back to the channel. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more original horror stories. With your host Dare. Today's story, the SecureStore Archive, a terrifying, haunted storage facility. There's a unique kind of silence that lives in a 24-hour self-storage facility at 3 in the morning. It's not the peaceful quiet of a sleeping suburb or the solemn hush of a library. It's a manufactured, industrial silence, thick with the hum of fluorescent lights and the scent of concrete dust and forgotten things. For the past 2 months, this silence had been the soundtrack to my life. My name is Mark, and I was the sole night shift attendant at SecureStore Solutions, a brand new, state-of-the-art facility on the forgotten edge of the city. It was a sprawling, 3-story cube of climate-controlled corridors, a pristine, white and orange purgatory for the possessions of people in transition. People like me. After a divorce that had efficiently stripped me of my house, my savings, and my sense of self, this dead-end job was a lifeline. All I had to do was watch the monitors, walk the floors, and make sure no one was living in their unit. It was the perfect job for a man who had become a ghost in his own life. The official company training, a series of mind-numbing online modules, emphasized our key selling points: digital surveillance, secure access, and peace of mind. The reality was a grid of 16 grainy, black and white cameras feeding into a monitor that was probably older than me. The job was less about security and more about presence. My role was to be a warm body, a deterrent. For the first few weeks, the job was a blessing of sheer, unadulterated boredom. The night bled together in a repeating loop of activity: the 10 p.m. perimeter check, the midnight patrol of Floor A, the 2 a.m. patrol of Floor B, the 4 a.m. patrol of Floor C, and the endless hours between spent watching the silent and changing grid of camera feeds. The tenants were a predictable mix of night owls, college students moving between dorms, and small business owners stocking inventory at odd hours. They'd nod at me, punch in their codes, and disappear into the labyrinth of identical hallways. The strangeness began subtly, as a series of explainable glitches. A tenant, a young woman with a distinctive red coat, would appear on camera 7 in the C-block corridor. Seconds later, she'd pop up on camera 2, way over in A block on the other side of the building. It was physically impossible to cover that distance in that time. I'd rewind the digital recording, scrub through it frame by frame, and find nothing. No splice, no jump. Just a clean, impossible transition. I blamed the cheap, outdated system. Signal crosstalk, I wrote in the nightly log. Then came the sounds. A faint, tinny melody, like a child's music box, drifting through the intercom system. I'd check the logs. No one had entered or exited the facility for hours. I'd walk the floors, my heavy footsteps the only sound, the melody always seeming to come from the corridor just behind me. When I'd turn, there was only silence and the endless, humming lights. Audio feedback from a nearby radio tower. I logged, the lie feeling thin even to me. The architecture of the place began to feel unstable. The corridors were identical by design: white walls, grey concrete floors, and endless rows of bright orange roll-up doors. It was easy to get disoriented, but this was different. I started leaving small, discreet marks during my patrols to maintain my bearings: a tiny tear on a poster, a specific scuff mark I'd make with my boot heel. I'd walk my route, a perfect circuit I had memorized, and find myself back where I started, my scuff mark staring up at me, even though I hadn't retraced my steps. The building didn't just feel like a labyrinth, it felt like it was actively rearranging itself around me. One night, the true, deep strangeness began to reveal itself. I was watching the monitors, half asleep, when I saw a flicker of movement on camera 11, C block, 3rd floor. It was a long, empty hallway. I rewound the footage. There, for a single, ghostly frame, was a man. He was standing in the middle of the hall, wearing a wide lapelled suit straight out of the 1970s, staring directly into the camera. His face was pale, his expression one of profound confusion. In the next frame, he was gone. My heart hammered in my chest. This wasn't a glitch. I checked the access logs for the entire day. No one had even been on the third floor. I printed the frame, the image grainy and distorted, and pinned it to the corkboard behind my desk. A ghost. A digital ghost caught in the machine. The facility was no longer just a building. It was a repository. It was leaking. I started finding things in the hallways during my patrols, objects that appeared from nowhere. A single, dusty child's saddle shoe. A yellowed postcard from Atlantic City, dated 1982, with no stamp. A half-eaten apple that was cold to the touch, as if it had just been pulled from a refrigerator. These things weren't dropped by tenants. They felt old, saturated with time. They were echoes, physical manifestations of the things stored behind the thousands of orange doors. My investigation, born of fear and a desperate need for a rational explanation, led me to one specific unit, number 734, on the third floor, in the heart of the C block where I had seen the man in the suit. The digital logs were bizarre. The unit had been rented since the day the facility opened 5 years ago. The renter was listed as J. Smith, with no address or phone number, only a P.O. box. The payments were automatically deducted from a bank account every month like clockwork. But in 5 years, the access logs showed that the unit's door had never once been opened. One Tuesday night during my 4 a.m. patrol, I felt an inexplicable pull towards that corridor. The air grew colder as I approached Unit 734. The hum of the lights seemed to dip in pitch, becoming a low, guttural drone. And I saw that the latch on the door was not fully seated. The heavy orange door was slightly ajar, a dark, vertical slash in the endless white wall. Every rule in the employee handbook, every instinct for self-preservation, screamed at me to walk away, to go back to my desk and pretend I hadn't seen it. But the need to know, to understand the source of the wrongness that had permeated my life, was stronger. My hand trembled as I pushed the door. It slid upwards with a low, rumbling groan. The air that rolled out was not the dry, sterile air of the facility. It was thick and musty, smelling of mothballs, old perfume, and something like baked ham. I shone my flashlight inside. It was not a storage unit. It was a living room, a perfect, complete living room from the 1970s. A garish, floral pattern sofa sat against one wall, flanked by 2 end tables with ceramic lamps. A shag carpet covered the floor. On a heavy, wood veneer television console, an old cathode ray TV was on, its screen filled with a black and white sitcom I'd never seen, the silent, smiling faces of the actors flickering in the dark. There was no dust. It was as if someone had just stepped out for a moment. I slammed the door shut, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the silent hall. My heart felt like it was going to beat its way out of my chest. I scrambled back to the security office, locking the door behind me. I sat in my chair, shaking, staring at the monitor for Unit 734. The door was closed. Locked. As if it had never been open at all. That was the night the facility stopped being a passive container and became an active participant. It started to archive me. I was watching the monitors when I saw him. A man in a security guard's uniform walking down the B block corridor on the 2nd floor. It was me. A perfect, identical copy, from my tired posture to the way I jangled my keys. I watched paralyzed as my doppelganger calmly performed his patrol, pausing to check a lock, shining his flashlight into a dark corner. He looked up at the camera directly at me and gave a small, knowing smile before turning the corner and disappearing. My phone rang, the sound so sudden it made me yelp. The caller ID was my ex-wife, Sarah. I answered, my voice a dry croak. "Sarah, you always do this." Her voice screamed from the phone, distorted and layered with static. "You never listen. You just retreat into your own little world." It was a word-for-word replay of the fight we'd had the night I moved out, her voice a twisted, disembodied echo. The line went dead. The building was now a weapon turned against me, using my own memories as ammunition. I had to get out. I grabbed my keys and ran from the office into the sterile, white labyrinth. But the building wouldn't let me go. I ran down corridor towards the main lobby, but when I took the final turn, I was somehow on the third floor, standing right in front of Unit 734. The corridors began to fill with the facility's archived memories. They were silent, transparent scenes playing out on a loop. I ran through a ghostly wedding reception from the 1980s, the spectral bride and groom dancing to silent music. I passed a child's birthday party from a decade ago, a small boy in a superhero costume staring blankly as he blew out non-existent candles. I stumbled through a heated, silent argument between two lovers, their faces contorted in rage, their hands passing right through my body. The building was a hard drive of moments, a museum of lives, and its data was corrupting, bleeding out into the hallways. I finally understood. The facility didn't just store objects. It stored the emotional and psychic residue attached to them. Every cherished photograph, every piece of inherited furniture, every box of forgotten letters fed the building. Unit 734 had been the seed, the first powerful collection of emotionally charged items that had given the building a nascent, hungry consciousness. Now it craved more data, more memories, more people. It archives you by slowly overwriting your reality with its vast, chaotic collection of stored moments until you forget your own story and simply become a part of its catalogue. I was trapped in a loop, the building constantly rerouting me back to the third floor. Defeated, I returned to the security office. And I saw him again on the monitor. My double. He was sitting in my chair, at my desk, calmly watching the screens. He looked up, as if sensing my presence, and smiled again. The main entrance chime sounded through the intercom. The motion sensor on the front door had been triggered. My doppelganger stood up and walked towards the front lobby, out of the camera's view. I was trapped back here, in the building's ever-shifting gut, while this seeker had taken my place. I looked down a long, empty corridor. Far in the distance, I saw a figure. A young woman, clutching a piece of paper, looking lost. She saw me and her face flooded with relief. She walked towards me. "Excuse me?" she asked, her voice echoing slightly. "I'm so sorry to bother you. I have a unit here, B217. I think I'm lost." I opened my mouth to scream, to warn her, to tell her to run and never look back. But the words that came out were not my own. They were calm, pleasant, and rehearsed, the same words I had spoken to a tenant on my very first night. "Welcome to SecureStore Solutions. You're in the right place. Just follow me." An echo of my own past had overwritten my present. I turned and led her deeper into the building, a smiling, helpful guide. Another ghost in the machine, another exhibit in the collection, doomed to welcome the next new acquisition to the archive of silent, forgotten things.